So Asian cinema is structured quite differently from Hollywood films or American films in general. I mean, there's the sense in America of how a storytelling should happen. For better or for worse, but you know, like to take examples from some of our previous lineups, and this is actually a film I think I quote in Berlin. I'm not 100% sure, but a film like Miss Zombie, for example. This is a movie that's all. I mean, a lot of it is in the setup, but it's highly unorthodox. That's I think actually that's
it's
funny.
One of my favorite films that I watched from the festival.
Oh, really?
I thought it was super unique. Also because it was so simple, there weren't that many characters, and yeah, the way it was. It's true. The narrative is very unorthodox, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a movie. You know, you can't really reduce it to a structure, and it really exists for its ending. You catch the first 10 minutes; it doesn't tell you anything about the film. Like that's a film that's so geared towards its ending.
I think it's more like they set up the mood, right?
That's
of the
right.
Film. Yeah,
it's very
rather than the
atmospheric.
narrative. Yeah.
Absolutely. There are other films like that. We showed Initiation Love. I mean, you watch an hour of it, an hour and a half, and you're like, oh, okay, that's a kind of a cute, a little bit cruel romance at times. And then you watch the end and like completely, you know, I mean, I'm not going to spoil it because actually, you know what? I think it's very hard to find the movie. I could talk about the end, but it's a little terrible.
Right. But that's what we're saying. It's when you're looking for a festival, it's a whole different kind of attraction you're trying to create. So,
True.
So like you said, you know, it's different. You're right. 10 minutes might not be enough.
Yeah.
And there's a whole nother way, you know, there's other kind of hooks.
So how do you decide if you're only watching 20 minutes?
Typically you have a discussion with the distributor. You feel hooked or not, and then you ask. Well, typically I ask to watch more of the film, or some of these market screenings have repeat screenings, so you can catch another bit. I mean, I found myself in that strange situation where I caught 20 minutes of a film, and then I could see the next half hour later. It was very bizarre.
Looking as far as acquisitions for distribution is different because you're not looking for like, oh, I'm going to screen this a couple times during a festival. I'm not like looking for a more niche situation all the time. You're looking to go, does this have theatrical potential? Can I put it in a theater even if I'm not going to make my money back? That's a marketing tool. People will know about the film, and then you have the ancillaries. You have all the, it goes on to video on movies on demand and so forth. So you're looking way beyond that.
I see. So it's a larger,
There's a lot more to consider, and that makes it a little tougher, I think.
than programming.
Because you get a lot of you see a lot of nice, for example, you'll see a lot of nice small indie movies, and you're like, this is actually good. And believe me, you see, you know, in acquisitions or even at festivals, there's a lot of stuff that's not good. So then you find something that's really good, but it's so small, there's no names in it, nobody knows anything about this. No one's going to want to book it theatrically or so forth. So there's that whole sort of conundrum.
But I thought the film festival, they're the ones who bring these like smaller films into the larger audience, right?
Yeah, because now you can sort of get away with, I would say,
doing
showing
an event. So
yeah,
I
doing
think
a special
the challenges are different. I think when you pick a movie, I mean that's the way I see you guys, and when I talk to buyers, you have more. It's both broader and more narrow in the sense that you have to have a larger perspective, think longer. Like, is this going to do well in ancillary, like on the on-demand platforms and so on? You know, there's the commercial aspect of it really to think about. That's the primary thing. Where festivals, you don't, but at the same time makes it also more narrow. Your number of picks, you know, have become.
So that's what becomes really exciting about programming for a festival is you can get all these more. You can go mainstream, but you can balance out with something that's really odd. That's like, oh, this is really. It's like you said, it becomes more of a special event. Like, oh, here's your one chance to see this movie that probably won't get picked up for distribution.
But that's also the challenge because at the same time, you know, you put out a few titles like this, and you know, there's 2 or 3 films. But a festival is like 50, 100 movies. So how do you make every one of them somehow special? You know.
Well,
that's the challenge.
That's one thing I find really fascinating. You know, you want to balance. You want to have your art house, your cult stuff, and your popcorn. So you have, okay, I've got something, I think it's really good. It's a little more, it needs a little bit, it's more cerebral. So I also need to book a movie that's like a crowd pleaser. balance it. That's my feeling. I don't know.
And does that also affect on the scheduling? I feel like sometimes when certain movies are back to back and you end up kind of watching back to back, I wonder if they're like programmed in a way that kind of maybe fits that. Like some big film comes first and then smaller films, or I don't know.
Oh, in terms of the scheduling?
Yeah, just like...
There's a whole science to it.
There is? Okay.
Yeah. It's really complex because it's a mixture. I mean, everything is like that for the festival. It's a mixture of what's available in terms of how the film is circulating around the world for its theatricals and for its theatrical releases and its film festival circuit, right? So it's just a matter of, can we get a print of that movie? Because sometimes you don't have a million prints of those, or DCPs.
There's a lot of logistics that influence it. It's not just an aesthetic decision, I guess. It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But personally, when it comes to scheduling and selecting a film, creating a lineup, I've always thought of it in a sort of a conversational way. I think at some point you start having a theme, you start seeing echoes, oppositions, and you try to have the films have sort of a conversation. You know, it's like that's my idea of it. You don't just make a jukebox list. You try to create something that makes sense, so that people come for hopefully. See several things that have a sense that, well, this is a vision of cinema, of a diverse vision of cinema, but there's a uniting thread despite the diversity. It's very complicated to create,
very interesting.
But that's what I try to do.
Yeah, I like that, because it's interesting to see as you make programming decisions how sort of sometimes salient themes will develop. Like for example, all these films maybe from this area are very dark or comedic or whatever, and it's sort of... It sort of creates
preoccupations,
right?
Commonalities. Like last year, there was this sort of very widespread concern, preoccupation about corruption. It was like, what's going on with our societies? Like all the filmmakers, like, oh my God, our societies are so screwed because we're so corrupt.
The opening film was about corruption in the police department.
That's right, in Japan, and somehow Korea obviously had a lot of things to say about corruption and bribery, all that, and moral corruption in general. So it was an interesting year that way, but I don't agree with the idea that you find a theme first, like, oh, this is what this year is going to be about. Like, how so? I mean, how do you know? I never quite understood, and yet you sort of have to go for that to get funding, because this is what we're going to do this year. So you're in this very strange situation where you're caught between past and future, right? So yeah, that's an interesting. But the fact is, but let's face it, a lot of the large festivals, they don't bother about this kind of stuff.
Really?
It's like, well, he's a big name, okay?
Oh, yeah.
They just pick up. That's how a lot of the biggest festivals proceed. It's like, you have a big name, we're just going to buy it or get it. They don't buy it per se.
Certainly that's would be the main situation in Berlin, for example.
Yeah, you have like big festival names. Like, they're just going to go there all the time. So I do think in that sense we find ourselves in a situation right now where a lot of the big festivals have become so predictable, very institutional. We're talking a lot right now about the establishment in general in politics. I think it affects other levels of society, and in our very, very small world, in our very small universe, it happens too, where you have these very large institutions, the Cannes Festival, the Venice, Berlin, where you've drifted towards a sort of a classification, like people just end up doing the same stuff. They're not really, it seems to me, interested in discoveries